Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Levi Stevenson, also the guy in charge sort of over at CF After Dark. Today is we're gonna kind of go through a few different topics here today. Obviously, we'll talk about the men's basketball team in the Sweet 16. We will be talking about Jimmy Rogers giving his first media availability of spring practice today. I want to also talk a little bit about women's basketball because we had a couple of different transfers today out of the program, and everyone's kind of on pins and needles a little bit and just seeing who's going to be transferring. And unfortunately, just within the last 15 minutes, we've gotten news that Addie Brown is going to be leaving Iowa State, which is a really big loss. We'll talk about that here in a little while too. But first, let's start off. I want to start off with football, actually, just because that's kind of the shortest one. But this is the voice of college football, so we're going to talk football to start off with. Appreciate everybody jumping in. Trax, Carter, everybody. So today, Jimmy Rogers gave his first media availability before spring practice here, and just kind of giving his thoughts on just how off-season workouts went, and with spring practice starting on Thursday. That, obviously, we've still got basketball to play for the men, but we've got we're officially pushing it up on football season right now, which is awesome. But fortunately, we can, I'd be kind of curious. I'd be curious to ask what Jimmy like, if he's enjoyed being, kind of out of the spotlight. He's basically been able to, move almost entirely invisibly up to this point. Partially it's the offseason, but partially also because Iowa State's got a really, really damn good men's basketball team. And so, that's taken all the headlines and all the media coverage up to this point. So, I'd be curious to see if that's been of benefit to him. But here's Jimmy Rogers talking a little bit about the beginning of the season. Video is courtesy of former current CF After Dark intern Jake Brend, also works for Cyclone Fanatic. Oh, you can't hear it. Oh, gosh. Okay. Here, you know what? We'll fix this. I got this. We can fix this really quick. My bad. I did not realize that I did not have the audio turned on. Let me fix that right now. We do indeed have the technology. All right. Here we go. Make that a little bit bigger.
Things going here on Thursday.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we've been through a series of meetings and some walkthroughs and stuff, but to finally get out here and see the guys actually compete, do football things, watch them practice, do the things that they're brought here for, that's what I'm excited for maybe the most.
What kind of growth did you see through the winter workouts across all the position groups?
Yeah, I'd say growth in many ways. I mean, growth as a team, building relationships is such a huge part of having the success that you want. But getting faster and getting bigger and changing their body and working on movement efficiency, all of those things, it was good to see. And then obviously there's going to be a growth through spring ball as far as learning a new system and, going through the trials of learning collectively as a whole. But I'm excited about the way the guys have attacked this whole process. Really excited about how they've come together as far as the relationships that are formed, and the guys that were here on the last team, being open arms to those that are coming in, and the amount of relationships that have already formed. And it was unique to watch the guys on spring break and who they spent their time with. A lot of the guys were, prior teammate or the guys that were here prior, connecting and going to places with the transfers. And so think things are moving in the right direction. And, at this point, it's going to come down to football and execution. So I'm excited for that.
What's unique about
So, like I said, I won't put you through the whole video since I'm sure a lot of you have already watched it. But it's good to hear those types of comments early in this the whole press conference is actually not press conference, but media availability was nice to listen to. After we got used to listening to Matt Campbell just say words for 10 years, I love appreciate everything Matt Campbell did at Iowa State. His media availability was a nightmare. He said nothing for 10 years. So it's nice to hear a coach speak very frankly about a lot of different things. One of the questions he's asked later on is, what are you hoping to learn most for yourself going into this season? And he said, well, I like to think I know myself pretty well, but I'm looking forward to getting into this or whatever. So like a very honest answer, because, I think for a lot the last decade, a lot of our reporters got used to kind of sending fairly not a lot of difficult questions Matt Campbell's way, knowing that, pretty much no matter what you ask him, he was going to give you kind of some of the coach speak platitudes and stuff like that. And so it didn't really like matter how much you pressed with a question or like what, to a certain extent, it kind of didn't matter a lot what you asked, because he had his talking points he wanted to hit. And, and now, but Jimmy Rogers is very honest about things. He speaks very matter of fact, and I appreciate that. But like Carter said here, I had a comment. He had a comment over maybe someone. Yeah, Carter. Good to hear that the chemistry has been solid so far. Yeah. This early part when you have 80 something new players on the roster, it's I'll pull up the comments on stream. When you have 80 something new players on the roster, building that team chemistry is pretty much, that's like paramount to what's happening so far, more so even than the X's and O's stuff. It's getting guys in shape, getting guys healthy, and just getting, like, as he specifically mentioned there, is getting those relationships in order. So, it's good to hear that he's positive about it. Would he tell us, this is a great question, actually. Would he tell us if it wasn't going well? What would, if it wasn't going well, what would he say? Because, Matt Campbell would never tell you. He'd say like, "Oh, we're still working on it," something like that. It'd be very kind of beating around the bush a lot. I'd be curious now. I'm curious what Jimmy Rogers would say if like he thought something wasn't going well, or I honestly think he would say, "Well, it's not where we want it to be, but we're working on it," and things like that. I think he'd be more honest about it. Not that I don't think like Campbell was ever dishonest about it. He just kind of withheld a lot of the truth, or a lot of detail. I guess he was intentionally vague in a lot of ways, especially with the injuries. If some guy pulled a groin, he would just say it's a lower body injury or something like that. It's just little annoying things, little like stupid annoying things. And but, I appreciate his honesty here so far. So, oh yeah. So here, yeah. So there was the assistant that left was the social media person, I believe, or the recruiting. It was the recruiting coordinator that left for, I think, USC. And actually, it was just the other day, I believe, Football Scoop announced that we had hired the recruiting director, social media person from Wisconsin. So, assistant D-backs coach. Okay, we were talking about different coaches, but what's happening with Campbell? Nothing. We were just talking about how just the different styles between Jimmy Rogers and Matt Campbell in the press conferences, and feeling like you can listen to Jimmy Rogers at immediate availability and get something out of it and feel like you learned something new. Or he gave you the answer that not necessarily that you were looking for, but he gave you the answer that's the most correct, versus Matt Campbell giving you like a not incorrect answer, but one that sounds a little bit more flowery than maybe people want to hear. So, and this is a good point here. I saw Redbird brought it up. Appreciate him with him saying at one point how much confidence he has in Roll, basically something around he's getting roll full control on that side. Yeah, because it came off for a question. I want to say it was Rob Gray asked the question, asking if it was either Rob Gray or Bill Seals, I can't remember, that asked because he's a defensive coach and because he brought over a lot of his defensive staff from Washington State, if the defense was ahead of the offense at this point. And Jimmy Rogers made a point to say that he's essentially giving Tyler Roll full control, fully trust him, and that he's felt so far that the offense has been, progressing nicely, and not that they're kind of bogged down or behind or anything like that. That he felt like the offense was up to speed, partially because of the detail that Tyler Roll has and what he does. And there's a reason that the Detroit Lions wanted him to be a position coach. There's a reason Matt Campbell hired him. It's because Tyler Roll is a good coach. He's good at what he does. We won't be able to see exactly what he's doing on offense, play calling wise, and all that until we see it in the fall. Basically, we can take some guesses. We can look at like what the Detroit Lions ran. We can look at what some of the stuff that frankly, what Iowa State ran. We can look at some stuff that North Dakota State ran. We can peer around. Actually, this year it would be maybe some stuff that the Bears ran with Ben Johnson. We can look at a few of those things and kind of guess, but we won't really know exactly what it looks like until we get to the Southeast Missouri State game. But it's good to hear. It's good to hear though that it seems to me as though he's taking a lot of the same CEO type approach that Matt Campbell took, where it was less about him coaching players, getting involved in the minutia of the drills and everything like that, and more so coaching the coaches on how to coach the players, which is very much how Matt Campbell did things. Tended to run stuff more above the coaches and help and delegate and direct and develop coaches. And that's how you can tell that. I think over time we'll see that Jimmy Rogers' coaching tree will expand fairly quickly. Babbitt is the defensive coordinator. Babbitt is one that I think most people are assuming will get a job at some point. And maybe it's maybe it's Tyler Roll or something like that. But though he, in his Detroit Lions press conference said that he was interested in calling plays and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's just like he wants to be a play caller and that's what he wants to do, or if he has aspirations to be a head coach at some point. Who knows? Duke sure wants to know how do you feel about us retaining Francois from Minnesota? I think it's a big, and if you can keep any of those higher end players from the last class and keep them involved, I think it's a huge win. And Francois, is it Dylan or Caleb? I'm trying to remember now. I remember watching his tape. But he's a nice player. I remember we watched his tape on a stream here, and he's a nice player. I'm glad we're able to keep him. And it's actually it was today. I think it was just today. Actually, it was announced that the basketball recruit that we have up there, whose name is completely escaping me right now, was named Gatorade Player of the Year from Minnesota as well. So obviously it's continuing to have success up in Minnesota. And I think that's a place that is kind of, to an extent, kind of ripe for the picking for Iowa State up there, because Minnesota as a football and a basketball program, especially basketball, Minnesota is nothing. Football, they're very just kind of middle of the road. They don't, Minnesota football doesn't have the same loyalty within the state as like Minnesota hockey does or something like that, where they keep, any any half decent hockey player from Minnesota pretty much stays up there, or goes to Duluth, goes to, plays for, yes, Christian Wiggins. Thank you. I'm trying to keep it up. I wasn't expecting to talk about Christian Wiggins today, but here we are. Christian Wiggins was named as the Gatorade Player of the Year up in Minnesota. So that's a big win for TJ Otzelberger. But you asked about Francois, and I think, there's a few guys that obviously they wanted to keep around in the class that Matt Campbell didn't take to Penn State with him. And this is one of them. I think it's a great fit. They have some depth at running back right now. We think they have some depth at running back. We'll see, how healthy River Peppers is. We'll see what Aiden Flora looks like with a bigger workload. I assume he will factor into the main running back rotation here, along with like Cameron Petaway and stuff like that. But we'll see. For lack of a better explanation, at least, like, Matt Campbell had a pretty good thing going here. So the more of that you can retain and build on that, I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of players from that recruiting class and from the last team that we would have loved to see stay because they were good players. And some of them, most of them didn't, but some of them did. And yes, there's no spring portal. Yeah, that's correct. So, I'm generally pretty happy with the class that they've got. The running back from Newton from 2027, I did want to mention him. I'm pulling up his profile right now, but he was at a camp down in St. Louis was named the MVP. Isaiah Hansen. He's a high 3-star running back from Newton. I remember, what was it last year? I think this was this past season that we had stayed overnight at a hotel in Marshalltown the night before a game because it was like an 11 a.m. kick, and that's a tough drive for us. We have to get up at like 3 a.m. to make those 11 a.m. kicks. But so, anyways, we were staying in the hotel, and I remember on a local channel there was a Newton. I want to say it was Newton, and it was maybe it was Newton and Marshalltown. I can't remember, but it was Newton and somebody. I remember watching that game and thinking, he's like, oh man, this running back's pretty good. Like I'd be interested to see what he's like as a prospect. And then sure as shit, here we are. And 6 months later, and he's committed to Iowa State, which is awesome. And he's committed to the new staff. He's just committed a few weeks ago. And I really like this kid. I was pretty impressed watching the little bit that I watched of him before. Before I really even knew who he was. Let me pull this up here. See a little bit of his tape. Just navigates traffic well. He runs tough. Keeps moving. Nice little stiff arm there. It's disgusting. And yeah, I guess he ran a 4.4 at the camp, which, camp times, how much, it's kind of, the hand clock stopwatches, I guess I don't know if it was hand clocked or if they had a laser timer there or what. Camp times can be, boosted a little bit just to help prospects get more eyes on them. But that being said, from what I've seen of his tape, this kid's got real speed. I mean, look at that. Tough run right through the hole, pulls away from everybody. And, he's playing, high level football within Iowa, however tough you believe Iowa high school football is, but he's pulling away from dudes. He's running through dudes. He's stiff arming them. I think this is a really nice pickup. And he had a nice weekend. He was the MVP of that camp down in St. Louis this past weekend. So definitely a player to keep an eye on for the 2027 class coming in as a freshman for 2027. So fun little player there. So that's kind of the main football happenings going on. They start spring practice this Thursday, and maybe we'll get some more nuggets out of camp. And then and he also talked a little bit about the showcase today. that's happening. I think it's at the end of April, like April 25th. It's going to be some sort of just kind of a practice with some scrimmage elements in it, which is kind of what Campbell did towards the end, where they never really played like a spring game. They just did kind of like a fancy practice with some scrimmage type stuff, with just some basic 11 on 11 stuff. But it'll be a first opportunity to go just see the team, see how things are going, and see some of the new guys. Check out Jalen Rayner, which I know I will be very anxious to watch Jalen Rayner, and I think it'll be a fun weekend. I'm going to try to make it out there for it if I can make it work. And maybe, I don't know, if they let us, I'll tailgate the spring showcase if they'll let us. But so keep an eye on that for your calendars. I think it's like April 25th, and we get our first look at these guys. So